So if you've been online in the past week or so, which I mean, of course you were, you probably know that Dream Theater just released a new album about a week or two ago. And because they've been mentioned in the comments many times, I thought maybe it'd be cool for me to listen to the whole album and see if there's anything relevant for me to talk about in the context of this channel. Now, I did that. I listened to the whole thing, and no, there isn't anything rhythmic that is relevant for me to discuss in the context of this channel. What? Relax. I'm not saying the album is bad. I'm just saying that there's nothing relevant for me to discuss in the context of this channel. So you can put your pitchforks and torches down.
Don't worry, nobody watches this stupid show. What's that ominous glow in the distance?
Anyway, while listening to the album, I found that there are a bunch of things that I did like. There's a few things that I didn't like at all, which we'll discuss later. But more than that, I had this internal conversation going on while listening to the album that I think might be interesting to just share with you guys. And don't worry, I'll go back doing my regular rhythmic breakdowns in no time. So, without further ado, I'm gonna attempt the most dangerous thing on the internet, which is talking about Dream Theater online. I'm even gonna delve into the whole Mike Mangini, Mike Portnoy situation and discuss that a little bit.
What did you say?
So here are 21 things I liked about the new Dream Theater album, and a few things that I didn't like as much. Yalla, let's do it. You can cut the intro, it's not a classic time-consuming episode. So the first few things that I like about this album all fall into the category of just generally cool musical moments. So the first thing is the intro for In the Arms of Morpheus. We start off with a really heavy 8-string guitar riff, which I really like. It sounds really good, sounds really heavy. I'm not sure what's going on there harmonically, but it sounds really modern and not Dream Theater, like in a good way. It sounds very different and very relevant, kind of. So I really liked that. I also really liked the drum groove with the 6 tuplets. That was really cool. I kind of hoped that he would go into blast beats for a second, because he does this feel that I really just thought would go to. I thought it would go there, it didn't, which is fine. Mike Portnoy also does his super signature Mike Portnoy fills, which we will discuss later, don't worry about that. All in all, it's a very cool way to start the album. Very heavy, very modern. I like that. Yogev from the future here. It's very hard to film yourself by yourself, which is why the focus on these shots is kind of messed up. Sorry. Next up is the whole first 2 minutes of A Broken Man. They start with that super intense motive in 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they just really milk that all the way through. They go into a different version of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they just really commit, which they don't usually do. They usually have that, odd bar of whatever, 6 or 4, just to like cut it and make it more angular, which I don't really like. But here, they just committed with that 5. They stayed there. The vibe is super cool. The energy is really high. It's a long stretch. It's like 2 minutes almost. I really like that. Next up is still in this song, A Broken Man. There's a great keyboard break in the middle with a really cool keyboard sound that with that vibrato thing. I really like that. But it's a classic Dream Theater, instrumental keyboard break. It just sounded really fresh. I don't know why. It sounded really cool. Maybe that vibrato thing, I really like that. And the section after it has a really cool Hammond. So the keyboard sounds that Jordan Rudess chose for these sections, they just sound great. I really like them. The next thing, still in this song, A Broken Man, this is super nerdy drum stuff. There's a double kick pattern that is a group of 9 notes. Knowing Mike Portnoy, he always plays singles with his kick drums. So I'm just wondering, when you do that and you have a group of 9 and you play in singles, the next repeat would start with your left foot. I'm wondering if he actually does that or he switches in the middle. Maybe he doesn't play the kick on the 1 of the next phrase. I don't know. I don't think I've heard him play a group of 9 like that. And I know that I'm coming across super nerdy, but I mean, I forgot. I can bring these here. For those of you who don't know what a kick drum is. Next up is Dead Asleep. About a minute or so into the song, they go into that heavy triplet riff. Now, first of all, whenever someone does something in triplets, I'm all in. I love triplets. You got 10 points just for that. But the riff itself is really heavy, which sounds really cool. And the first time Portnoy plays a groove over it, he plays a groove with the snare drums on beat 1, which I just really like. Which I was really happy to hear. Also, at the end of that song, there's a piano melody that comes back throughout the whole album. It really reminds me of which is it's just pretty funny. Next up is Night Terror, and specifically the instrumental section. As I mentioned before, Dream Theater usually has these 4-bar phrases that the last bar is either shorter or longer than the previous bars, and that really flips the feel of the groove that came before. And again, I don't really like that, but here in this instrumental section, they mostly, keyword mostly, stay in 7. There are some odd bars that are longer or shorter, but for the majority of it, they stay in 7, which feels really, really good. I like that they ventured a little bit into those worlds where the meter just stays more constant and the feel is not compromised over all the crazy stuff that is happening. Listening to that instrumental was way more satisfying than I thought, so great stuff. Next one is a short one, but there are really, really good pre-choruses in this album. A Broken Man and Dead Asleep are really good examples, but the other songs as well. I'm not sure why I noticed that, but it's awesome, so who cares? Next up is Midnight Messiah, specifically the chorus of that song. This chorus really sounds like the old Metallica stuff, which I really, really like. The thrashy, Kill 'Em All, Ride a Lightning vibes really shine through in this chorus. I don't know if it's a nod, like a conscious nod to them or something like that, but it really reminded me of that era, and it feels really, really awesome. Also, at the end of the song, there's that guitar riff. It sounds great. It's really satisfying. Epic. Next up is the track Are We Dreaming? It's a short interlude track that I really liked. The atmosphere and vibe that it created were really effective. It kind of puts you in a mood, a certain mood. And being a huge Opeth fan, the first half of the track really sounds like an Opeth song. So that was great. Last but not least is the Shadow Man incident, specifically the Star Wars marching section in the middle. It starts with a kick drum playing the pulse, and then they go into a classic Dream Theater unison, guitar, snare drum, where everyone plays the same rhythmic figure. And they've done that a million times before in Overture and Dance of Eternity and all those songs. So they do the same kind of thing here, but the two things that really caught me, first of all, there is a triplet, which I like. So they have the 16th note triplets, those they use all the time, but they have an actual 8th note triplet as well, which makes it feel a little bit slower, which I like. And they also take the first one out. I like all of those things, you know I like all of those things. The second thing I like about it is that I couldn't really grasp the whole pattern. I didn't really know when it starts, when it repeats. In the other songs, let's say you just hear that it's in 4. You can predict it. It's very, very easy. Here, it's not the case. In the first listen, I couldn't really know when would that triplet come again and throw me off. So I really liked that. That was pretty cool. Alright, moving on to the next 2 points. In Dream Theater specifically, and in metal in general, there's a lot of unisons going on. So bass and guitar would play the same things. Kick drum and guitar would play the same rhythmic figures. It's very effective and very stylistically appropriate, cool, but when it happens all the time, it can be kind of boring. And I really like when there's layering in the composition where the kick drum will play something, the guitar will play something else, or maybe the bass will play something that isn't just an exact replica of what the guitar is playing. And that doesn't really happen too much in Dream Theater, but it does in this album. There are 2 sections that do that. So the first one is verse 2 of Night Terror, where the guitar is playing and the bass is playing. That slide is really, really cool. Just the fact that the bass and the guitar are not playing the same thing, the bass is just accenting some aspects of what the guitar is playing, just adds a lot of depth to that riff. In the second instance where that happens is midway through the Shadow Man incident. There's that riff, which classically you would just assume that the drums would play, and the fact that he doesn't, he plays something like, so he again emphasizes just a small section of what the guitar riff is playing, and it just sounds way more light, but way tighter in a way. So I like that that's what they chose to do in that section. Alright, the next category of things that I like about this album are solos, both guitar solos and keyboard solos. So the guitar solo on Night Terror has a really cool sound to it. The highs are a little bit cut, and it sounds like there's some chorus or flanger going on. I really like that. In general, I like the texture and sound-oriented solos. So the Sacrificed Sons solos is one of my favorite Petrucci solos ever. And I like that when the shredding and the melodies are not necessarily the focus and the soundscapes are more of the highlight. Awesome. The Dead Asleep guitar solo also has a similar sound profile. Definitely not the guitar solo on A Broken Man. I mean, that blues feel, was so unnecessary. I really don't like that. Next up is, of course, the guitar solo on Bending the Clock, which I'm sure that there are like a gazillion YouTube videos from nerdy guitar players talking only about that. The thing I like about that solo is that, as opposed to other John Petrucci solos, the shredding parts arrive pretty late in the solo. So there's a lot of melody, a lot of really nice just guitar playing going on. Now sure, it's still kind of square for my taste, where all the downbeats of the important bars are really emphasized, and I don't really like that all the time. But the fact that it's so melodic for so long and the shredding only gets there at the end, I really enjoy that. It really uses the fact that he can shred like a monster. He uses that as a compositional tool to get to the peak of the solo, and not just like starting the solo and just playing as fast as you can. You get the point. I love that. But also, that song ends with a fade out. Why would you ever end the song with a fade out after the 80s? Oh, I hate fade outs. The 80s are gone. They're in the past. Let's keep it that way. Please, let's not end songs with a fade out anymore. Next up, we have a keyboard solo, specifically the Hammond solo in the Shadow Man incident. Now, I love Hammond sounds. I've been a huge Deep Purple fan for years, so I really like that. The one thing I don't like about this is that the keyboard solo is so low and the rhythm guitars are so loud, but the keyboard sound itself from the solo, awesome. Staying in keyboard land, the piano solo in that same song, The Shadow Man Incident. Now, I'm not sure what's cooler, the solo itself or everything that came before it. So what came before it is, first of all, there's that riff that sounds like whatever that song is, Raising the Knife? Breaking the Knife? Raising the Knife, I think so. There's a cool riff in that song in the middle, and this song kind of like sounds similar to that. After that, there's the Test That Stopped Them All outro, or that section in Octavarium, like upward motion 16th notes, and then the keyboard solo happens, which, first of all, piano sound, which is awesome. I love that. Second of all, it's in a Latin kind of feel, which usually I wouldn't like, but it doesn't really bother me for whatever reason. Also, guitar riff is gone, so it's just bass and piano and drums, which sounds, again, really light, really refreshing. So I really like that one. And right after that, another guitar solo, which again, similar sound profile. The highs are cut, the beginning with those harmonics and those high notes, again, just really remind me of the Sacrificed Sons solo, which I really loved. So yeah, another good solo for this song. And of course, last but not least, Mike Portnoy's breaks on that same song. So there's that section, where usually he would accent those guitar hits every time before a fill. He will play the accents and then play a fill, accents, fill, accents, fill. Now, he does that here as well completely, but there are two cool things that I've noticed that just popped out to me. One, he plays that Honor Thy Father pattern thing, which is really cool. And two, towards the end of the solo, he skips one of those guitar hits. So he does something like that. Kind of like goes over the bar line. It feels like he's going over the bar line by ignoring those guitar hits. And even though it's a really small detail, it doesn't feel like it's his usual go-to to not accent those. So I really appreciated that he did do that, because it caught me a little bit by surprise, and I was like, oh, cool stuff. And the last thing that I liked about this album is lyrics. Now, if you think, well, Yogev, you're a drummer, why do you care about lyrics? You will be correct. I haven't cared about lyrics for a long time. I'm trying to get more into it. I mean, lyrics, it's words, it's the most communicative thing in a song. I should be paying way more attention to that. So I read all the lyrics for all the songs while I was listening to it. And in the song Leper Messiah, Midnight Messiah, the Metallica reference just stuck to my head, which later I've learned that Mike Portnoy wrote those lyrics. They have a bunch of references to older Dream Theater songs. So he says the words Strange Deja Vu, Constant Motion, Calling Me Back to My Home, and Dying Soul. All are older Dream Theater songs. And he says the words Bring Me Back Into the Dream, something like that, which might refer to Mike Portnoy coming back to Dream Theater. I don't know if I'm stretching or not, but it was cool to notice anyway. Okay, so those were the things that I really liked about this album. So now I want to mention the two things that really bothered me in the album. The first one is the mix. Now, on one hand, the drums sound incredible. They sound really good. Guitar sounds incredible. Both lead and rhythm guitars. James LaBrie sounds good on this album. He's been getting a bunch of slack from everyone forever, but he sounds good on this album. Bass is literally gone non-existent. You can't hear bass. It was really hard for me to distinguish what is bass and what isn't because it's so low in the mix, and I hate that, which reminds me of some certain other album. For me, the Train of Thought mix where bass was a little bit more pronounced was so much better. It really bummed me out that I couldn't hear bass here. And keyboards are really low. Even in the solos, the rhythm guitar just overpowers it all the time, and it bums me out to listen to music like that. The second thing that I really don't like about this album, and this is completely a personal thing, all the rapid feel changes. Now I know that that's a staple of Dream Theater's music, and I used to like it, but my taste kind of like went to a different direction. I don't really like that anymore, and that's just sprinkled all over the whole album. I wrote a bunch of examples for where, but it doesn't really matter. It's everywhere. It kind of feels like Mike Portnoy coming back to the band wanted to re-establish all the things that he did, so he just falls into those patterns where he'll play a riff 4 times and it's very predictable that he's gonna go from just all those feel changes. I really don't like those. I like settling in to a groove and staying in it and being able to interact with it physically when I'm listening to something. And when you change those so often, I find myself just being stuck, listening without moving, and I really don't like that feeling of not knowing if I can trust this beat to stay or not, and then I'm just there, sitting, looking into the abyss, listening to music without really reacting to it. And it really feels kind of forced for me here. I really don't like that. And that really led me to think about creativity in general. Now I'll tell you where I'm coming from. So Mike Portnoy playing Mike Portnoy parts and me finding them not as appealing now, even though I used to find them appealing when I was younger. The first thing that I was thinking about is, oh, this is so repetitive, this is again the same Dream Theater, blah blah blah, and all that. But then an interesting thought came to my head. When other bands that I like now do that same thing, let's say I really like Meshuggah, as I'm sure you guys know. They've been doing the same exact thing for, I don't know, 15 years, maybe 20 years, since the Nothing album, whenever that came out. And I love it. I never complained that it sounds the same, which means that I don't really mind that people sound the same, but if it fits my taste, I'm good. If it doesn't, then I don't like it, which makes sense. But that made me realize that I might not be liking this album so much because my musical taste has changed and went to a different direction. As a Dream Theater album, it's a great album. I'm probably not the audience for it anymore. And also, I mean, they've been playing together, specifically in this formation, Mike Portnoy, John Mayung, and John Petrucci, for 40 years. 40 years. I haven't been alive for 40 years, let alone playing music for that long. There's a limit to how creative you can be without just repeating yourself. I mean, I recorded a bunch of albums. Sadly, a lot of them are not out. I'm looking at you, Rosale. But even I repeat myself all the time. And I didn't play nearly as many albums as Mike Portnoy did. So, I mean, I can't really complain that they do playing with the same people for 40 years. Also, the first 8 or 9 Dream Theater albums, each one of them has just blown me away. You know, Images and Words came out, that was something else, and then Awake, and that was something else, all the way to Train of Thought and 6 Degrees and Octavarium. I love each one of those, and they all sound so different from each other. How creative can you be? How much more can you push yourself to be something different than what you are? And at some point, that's just who they are, and I actually really like that. They really hone in into like, yeah, these are my fills, these are my guitar solos, that's who we are. Now, yeah, I heard, you know, the opening fills from Mike Portnoy, and for me it was like, oh boy, just like the same fills again. But then in a way it was like, yeah, the same fills again. Again, it's the same guy. This guy completely taught me how to play drums. So maybe I can't relate to it now, but I grew up learning drums from Mike Portnoy and Lars Ulrich. But Mike Portnoy was one of my biggest inspirations. So yeah, it's the same Mike Portnoy, so it's the same feels, and that's great. That's who he is. I also always had this notion of, I never really knew when I was creating my own drum sound if I wanted to be recognizable or not. I wanted to be like a chameleon who can just disguise himself in any style, or I want to be able to have a signature sound that means that when I play, people will just say, oh, that's Yogev. With Mike Portnoy, I can hear him for a second, and it'll be very clear that Mike Portnoy is playing. Now, which one is cooler? I'm not sure, but I'm starting to lean towards the one that you are recognizable. I like the fact that he has his personal stamp on music to such a degree where if he plays something, I'll just know that it's him. I really hope to have that thing one day where I have my own style and it's so unique to me that when you or anyone else listens to something that I play on, you can just like say, oh, that's Yogev for sure. It sounds like Yogev. I think that's the way to go. It makes it really personal, makes your drumming really about you and what you are about, which I love. So in a way, I really like that statement of, yeah, I am Mike Portnoy. These are the fills that I like to play, and I'm gonna play them. That idea is something that I really, really resonate with. And talking about Portnoy, let's address the elephant in the room, the whole Portnoy Mangini situation. Now, I like both drummers for very different reasons. So on the very technical, nerdy drum stuff, Mike Mangini is a way better drummer. Yo, I can hear you press caps lock before you comment, I can hear it. But that's what I think. His drum solos are way more inspiring for me. His drum parts are way more up my alley, I like them way more. And his performance and execution are just next level. He's better than everyone else, it's just a fact. On the other hand, Mike Portnoy, he's the man. He is Dream Theater, at least for me growing up as a drummer. He is the guy that I think about when I think about Dream Theater. When I go see them live, he's the person that I want to see there. He taught me so many things and I owe him so much of my playing that I just love that guy. Having him back in the band and having his energy, his personality and his stage presence back in that show, I love that. Mind you, I haven't been listening to Dream Theater for the past maybe 10 years or so. The last time I saw them live was 2011 with Mangini, which was amazing, I have to tell you, it was amazing. But I haven't really seen them since then. And once they announced that he's back and they're doing a tour, there is no question in my mind I am going to see a show. There's no question. And if any of you are going to the March 14th show in Connecticut in the United States, I will be there, so come say hi. But there's no question in my mind that I'm gonna be there. I'm not gonna miss that for anything. This is the band that I grew up listening to, and this is the guy who taught me everything I know about odd time signatures, how to write cool drum parts, how to play very long songs. All of it came from him. So of course I'm thrilled that he's there. And one last note about that, I think the whole internet community took this whole Mangini Portnoy thing way too far. Portnoy decided to leave in 2009, Mike Mangini stepped in and he got so much unnecessary hate. He did the best job that anyone can do within the context of that band. I love that guy. To sum up, this is a great Dream Theater album. Now, will I be listening to it on repeat? Probably not, because it's not really my style anymore. I don't really listen to that anymore. But it's a great Dream Theater album. Okay, it's time to finish this video. I need to shut up. Let me know what you guys think. Do you like this album? Do you not like this album? Do you like this video? Do you not like this video? I'm not even sure people are still watching. Let's see. If you're still watching, comment your favorite current TV show that you're into. Mine is Severance. Season 2 is out. Super cool stuff. Dylan G is the man. Tell me what's yours. Alright, as usual, thank you very much to my Patreon supporters. You guys help me out so much. I appreciate it immensely. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be going back to my regular rhythmic video stuff very soon. So I'll see you in the future.